All right, well, here is my new book, literally up about 5 minutes ago. It's called Agents of the Arts. I've been working on this, I guess, since the past 3 years, been trying to piece together a curriculum that meets the nation and the Archdiocese's requirements as well. So the premise is taking agency. So the whole book revolves around a set of 180 verbs used in art that require one to affect the world. So instead of a verb that is passive, all these verbs are active and leave change. So I've collected about 180, and the book is based around that. It also recognizes the climates in which art is produced and the culture that arises out of those climates. So let's take a look. Uh, Here we go. So we have this beautiful ultramarine kind of purple throughout the book. Trying to flip, I'm just using the keys. There we go. All right. Okay, so here's a entryway into the book. Just kind of like a dedication. It's original quote. The greatest thing the arts can give us is a voice to speak into the void. And when our voices don't speak back to us, you can be sure that the void, in its winding way, is searching for just the right way to send back affirmation of its understanding, be it tomorrow or at 80 years old. All right, so we have a little definition of the self, explanation about why we make art, referencing some authors and psychologists. The phase an art project might take, starter questions, developmentally appropriate, moments in history. So we have a nod to art history. I did not provide examples of art history. That is up to the educator and students to decide on. A lot of that imagery and painting and photography are copyrighted. So I was limited to only original work for the book. How to make an artist statement. This is common practice in the art world, whether it's in a show or at the beginning of an exhibition or just personally about work. Categories. So in order to kind of process and comprehend the standards in art, I've broken them down into categories which work for me, that help me understand what I'm doing, because the language is not fashioned for students or myself sometimes. So I try to have it fit both when I can. Those categories in turn become goals. So those are age specific. Standards are derived from psychological study, developmental psychology. And then we have the agents. So about 180 I came up with. And those can cross disciplines. They don't have to stick with just math. These also are relevant in literacy and science and social studies as well. So the moments in history are specific to location. So when delving into this content, know that every piece of work is unique to its environment. So take into consideration the climate zone in which plants, animals, geology all take place. And then to prove that these things are aligned, and I've taken the time over these past 3 years, there's a chart of that alignment of the categories to state, well, national actually, which includes state, and Archdiocese. And then at the very end, we get into kind of some Metamodern kind of ideas and terms that cross times in history, not just Metamodern or current or contemporary or modern. Let's take a look. So what is a self? Roles, this is referencing Erik Erikson. We have a little forward explanation of the book about why it came to be. Project design. When they're little, up to 4th grade, they're working with schemas. And in pre-K and kindergarten, they are not working with any schema, really. Once you get older, you take yourself into consideration. So 5th to 8th, they're capable of helping and working with the educator, teacher, to design projects. So working with the students and working with each other comes to the front of their mind. You can see that in 4th grade and even beginning in 3rd grade and sometimes 2nd too. Schema. So this is information, how it's arranged and delivered to students. Easy, these could be slides, a board, starter questions. So these are developmentally appropriate, taken from Victor Lowenfeld. Phases of a project. These are aligned with the Mayan cardinal directions. So you have start in the east, production in the south, finalization where the sun goes down, it becomes night, and then release in the north. So here we get description of developmentally appropriate questioning for students. Once you get to 5th to 7th, they like to see realism. They like realism and want to know how to do that. And then they ease off of that a little bit and become more interested in kind of like how things are, but not necessarily the construction of them. So they're more naturalistic. They might think of Van Gogh's potato eaters and kind of work. Moments in history. So this is how we're breaking down the information required, like to understand a work and in our own work. So we look at others' work the same way we look at our own, and that's included in the artist statement. And then we have different kinds of media, just your basic kind of things. This is by no means an exhaustive list. How a goal is broken down. There are 3 questions that correspond. That took a lot of work. And then we have the categories. So this is where my original artwork comes in because I couldn't use copyrighted stuff. You can find so many things online. So I ended up referencing and using my own imagery. So you can see a Lopa Pesa under weaving, as well as work from my own publications. Age specific. So this, you can see, you can follow a category all across from pre-K all the way up to 8th grade. So that sticks with them. And then we go into specific grade levels, 1st grade, and there's descriptions, a detailed description with 3 questions. So we have those grade levels. And then all the way to 8th, we have the agents. So these kind of work like journals, starters at the beginning of class. Students have a blank sheet to illustrate and explore that agent verb. So these are transitive verbs. I had to omit a lot because some of the words that we use in art are intransitive. So they're not acting on anything. They're not leaving evidence of change or affecting the world. And this whole book is about agency. So there are a lot of agents that can be used across all disciplines and presented in plays and performances, in books, collections of work, portfolios. And then we have the moments in history. This was fun. So I put all this onto a Dymaxion map developed by Buckminster Fuller from Illinois in Carbondale. So we have all the climate zones, and basically the idea is to collect artworks into these climates. The only way you know the climate is if you know the location that the work was produced or where the artist was living, whichever one you could find. And it gets down to nitty gritty, like all the way to year that a work was produced. And it's easy to calculate the age the artist was when the work was made. You just have to know their birth date and when they died as well. So many artists I use are still living, but we also have people who have passed away. So there are a lot of climate zones. Those are all defined, very nice maps that can be used anywhere. And then after we get past these blank pages, kind of like a workbook, we get in, you have to organize these things, and this could be used over many years. And then we have movements. So 3 very important movements: Metamodern, Postmodern, Modern. And then we have a description kind of the values that are going on during those times, but it doesn't stop there. We have some specific terminology to those movements. And then we get into the movements that happened prior to modernism and also during postmodern, modern, metamodern as well. So some of these movements have never ended. And we have pages with descriptions. And even a few examples written. I cannot use the imagery. So that's up to the educator and students to research and provide prints or displays on digital media. There's an ebook of this available as well. Here is the alignment. So we've got national standards, and you also have the Archdiocese standards within the categories. And my wording here. Then we have a handful of useful terms. Yes, they are small, but this is just kind of a beginning of something that beginning just to touch on with the students. And then a metamodern framework. So if the categories became metamodern, this is what they would be. And then beneath those are the current categories. So if you want to teach a metamodern curriculum, adopt the words above. But you can teach it with the current categories below them as well. And then we have the backup.